right, good morning everybody. Uneducated Economist here. In this video we are going to be talking about how it is that you can prepare for the inevitable collapse, the economic failure that is going to be taking place soon, and how it is or why it is that you cannot stop it. So what we have going on here is ultimately the Cantillon effect in full swing, and most people who are looking at the economy have never really taken it into consideration how it is that the new money is separating the rich from the poor. And now we live in an economy that is fiat currency based, ultimately debt based, meaning that there is ever increasing amounts of new debt issuance. And with this ever increasing amounts of new debt issuance, we have ever increasing amounts of new money that's pouring into the system. This ever-increasing amounts of money that pours into the system will definitely separate the rich from the poor and cause inequality. Now, to understand what it is that's actually taking place is to really step it back in time to really go and look at things like Cantillon's essay on economic theory and the chapters on increasing and decreasing the amount of money in the state and what ends up happening to the people when this new money starts to pour in. Ultimately, it raises consumption, and by raising consumption, you will begin to raise the prices of everything. As the prices rise, you will find the separation really beginning to take place as people who have last access to the money will end up suffering with the lowering of their standard of living, and ultimately their jobs leaving and foreign production coming in. Now, this is all of it in a nutshell, but this is really what has taken place right now, and we are finding the end results of what it is that takes place when the manufacturing state shifts to a debt-based currency, and here the United States being the world reserve currency in a situation that has never existed in the history of time, so there's no real example of it. We have ever increasing amounts of new money pouring into the system that is ultimately going to continue going into the future so long as the United States dollar is the world reserve currency. There is no reversal to the situation. So understanding that to be the case, and that, really there's all kinds of ideas on how to stop the flow of money going directly to the rich. But in the end, if you have new money that pours into the system, it's the individual's behavior with the money that ends up creating the situation that we now face today with such, magnitude difference between the rich and the poor. So let's talk about the Cantillon effect, and let's talk about the situation that has taken place now so that you can better prepare yourself for it, what it is that you can do in order to deal with the problem that is going to be continuing going into the future, so long as we have a central banking system, so long as we have fiat currency, so long as we have the powers that be conducting themselves in the way that they are. There is no way that this is ever going to have anything else other than more inequality going into the future. So let's talk about the Cantillon effect. Let's talk about what it is that was taking place here in the United States, and then what it is that happened with the currency as well that has now created this ever-increasing amounts of new money, new debt issuance that we now have to deal with in our daily lives. Because there was a time when our efforts was enough. Like, we could go and have a day job, and if we were somewhat disciplined at that day job, we could save enough to have a decent house, a decent family, a decent retirement, all the stuff that came along with having the American dream. And it really wasn't that hard to acquire, but now it seems like it's just a far off distant dream, even a nightmare for other people who try to acquire this, only to understand for me to understand and look at it saying, man, it's not necessarily their fault in what it is that they are doing with their day jobs. It's the timing of it, right? It's the time in our cycle of this economy that we are now facing where the average everyday worker is essentially punished bad. And it's not like they're being punished like, hey, we need to punish you for your bad deeds. It's being punished in the sense that the economy is not really available for them, like for them to do what it is that they had done throughout history, or at least from our recent understanding of history, in order to acquire that what is they need. So let's talk about it for just a little bit, right? Let's talk about what happened here in the United States, because we were a manufacturing powerhouse, and we really have to understand that being the difference compared to what we were to where we are today. People say, hey, how come a day job isn't enough to provide for the entire household? It's the dollar's fault, right? Well, yeah, okay, yeah, the debasement of currency and all that has a lot to do with it for sure. But really, we have to think about what it was that we were doing as a nation back in the day when we were that, American dream, highest standard of living. We were a manufacturing powerhouse. So we produced the world's greatest stuff and we sent it out there to the world, and the world sent us what? Gold. We had a bunch of gold. We had all the money, right? And so just think about that and just in itself. Like if you were an individual person who raised your capabilities, your skill set, your production that you were doing, like, you're building stuff or, manufacturing things or just providing a service, you increase your industrious capability and you are going to get new money. All right. Now, back in the day, that new money was gold, and gold was very limited. Right? So if you can imagine that you and a bunch of your buddies who were very industrious started to produce things and acquiring the gold, and you thought, man, I'm going to hold on to this gold for the future because I want to save. I want to produce and save because that builds a strong, life, that builds a strong, stable income, whatever it is, like, that's stability. That's what most people would look at, right? Having a good savings. And if you have a savings in gold, well, then that's ultra stability because, there's a limited amount of gold out there and it's proven itself useful for the last 5,000 years. So here we had a situation as a nation that the majority of the people were producing and saving, and then we were doing it in gold. We produced the world's greatest stuff and we saved it in gold. Now, just say it out loud. Is that a better situation than being debt-based? Absolutely it is. Like, there's no argument about it. So people say, well, we had such a better life back in the day. Yeah, look what we were doing. We were producing awesome stuff and we were trading that awesome stuff for gold. No wonder why it was an awesome existence having the highest standard of living. It was amazing. But in the unfortunate circumstances from raising the standard of living is also increased in consumption, and the increase in consumption also raises prices. And so this is really what ended up happening here in the United States as we increased our standard of living due to the massive amounts of production that we were doing and bringing in all that gold and enjoying that gold and enjoying that higher standard of living. We started raising the prices of everything here in the United States. Right? You increase consumption, supply, demand imbalances. This isn't rocket science. This is economics 101, right? So if you raise the consumption and you start to raise the prices of everything, what's going to end up happening? Right? I mean, just think about it. If you're earning a high wage or you're demanding a high wage and you're competing for a job and somebody else comes in and says, hey, man, I can kind of do what you do. Maybe not quite as good, but I do it a whole lot cheaper. Like, it kind of ends up being a lot of where people lean to is the cheaper thing, right? So here in the United States, although we were producing the world's greatest stuff, we increased the prices of everything from all the consumption we had done from building all the world's greatest stuff and increasing our holdings of the gold. We increased our consumption. Now all of a sudden we have higher prices and we're competing with foreign competition. Foreign competitors say, hey, we're building that same thing for you. We can build it cheaper. Not quite as good, but it's pretty good. Well, hey, new money coming in. Don't want to spend that new money on higher prices, so in come the foreign production. Well, now if you got foreign production coming in, what do the domestic suppliers say? Hey, that foreign production's cheaper. You're buying that. Our sales are going down. What do we do? Well, you better produce in a foreign nation because you got to compete with these other foreign producers out here. So now domestic manufacturers are leaving. This is the wedge. Boom, right there. It just got driven. You see, we were producing the world's greatest stuff and sending that stuff out there to the world, and the world was sending us their gold. We had first access to the money. We were very close to the gold. Just being a producer saver puts you very close to it. This is the reason why you had a high standard of living, why it is that single income could produce enough for the entire household. Now, it's very different. Because now being closer to the money is meaning that you have to have debt issuance, right? Because the new money coming in from manufacturing is no longer coming in from the manufacturer. The new money comes in from debt issuance. Now, how did this occur? Right? What happened here? Like, this seems like manipulation and political pull and powers that be wanting to put everybody into debt slavery. That's what happened, right? I mean, we can talk about that all day long. I mean, there's books written on it and all kinds of YouTube channels that make a lot of money talking about that. But ultimately, let's decide what happened really, because when it comes down to doing transactions, there's not enough gold. I mean, if you're hoarding all the gold and you're producing and saving, right? And you're sending the stuff out there to the world and the world is sending you their gold and you're like, okay, cool. I'm holding on to this gold because I want a nice, strong, stable economy and I want to, have a nice savings and I want security. And so I'm holding on to this gold. And you go and say, hey, man, I got some more products there. Are you going to buy some more of my products? And they're like, well, we would, but you got all the gold, bro. Yeah, we do. Huh. That sucks for our production, doesn't it? Yeah, sure does, doesn't it? Yeah. So you're gonna have to give up that gold. No. There's got to be a different way, right? I mean, ultimately, you don't need the gold, right? You just need to be able to do transactions. That's really the problem here, right? I mean, it's not that you really need your gold back. You just need the ability to do transactions. Let's just get down to the brass tacks of it. Okay, so how about this instead? Because there's not enough gold to do the transactions. How about we issue out a paper currency enough to fulfill the needs of the business cycle so that when the business cycle picks up, we will introduce a fiat currency, make this elastic money supply so that all the transactions that want to be done can be done. And then if the economy slows down, we'll retract some of that money and pull that back out. It will be an elastic money supply, right? How does that sound? That's pretty cool because then we won't ever have to worry about there not being enough currency to do transactions. See, this is ultimately what ended up going down. The Federal Reserve back in 1913 was established just for that, to create an elastic money supply, to introduce fiat currency into the system when the business cycle heated up, to make sure that all the transactions in the business cycle could continue, and if it slowed down, they would withdraw the money out of circulation, and this was going to be a really good thing for everybody out there. And they promised they wouldn't print too much. So time goes on, people are like, it's not a good idea. Bad idea. And everybody said, yeah, what are you going to do about it? Because you want to do transactions. They're like, yeah, we do want to do transactions. Are you sure we're going to be able to turn these Federal Reserve notes into gold? And everybody's like, oh yeah, go ahead, try. Can you do it? Yep. See, you can do it. Everybody can do it anytime you want. And they're like, I don't know, but I do want to do transactions, right? So the world had a choice. They could say, nah, I ain't accepting no fiat currency from no central banking system. No, thank you, sir. Right? They chose to accept it. They chose to accept it because they wanted to do transactions. See, if they didn't accept the fiat currency, they would have been like, well, okay, then starve, suffer. Don't do transactions. Don't do business. People were like, man, I want to do business. It was just like, I want to sell my items. And it was just like, well, if you want to sell your items, what are you going to use? Right? Well, you can use actual gold or you can use something that says it's as good as gold. People were able to trade their paper into gold. They grew confident that they would always be able to do it, and they accepted the fiat currency. And the Federal Reserve was then free to print up as much money as they want. The United States could freely spend money. And this is the ultimate consequences of the people accepting the fiat currency as opposed to rejecting it themselves. They didn't have to do it, they chose to. They were hungry and they wanted to do transactions. And so people could say, well, that they were forced into it. It was just like, no, they weren't. They were convinced that that was the only thing possible and that there was nothing else that they could do. Right? Because they were tricked, manipulated, or just not smart enough to figure it out, is the consequences that we now face today. So what is it that you're going to do? Are you going to go back in time and say, hey, man, why don't you pay attention to what the difference between fiat currency and a gold standard is? Can you do that? I don't think you can. See, we already got this system established with the central banking, and everybody knows how to deal with the central banking system. They don't know how to deal with the fact that if you go to a gold standard, our standard of living would have to collapse immediately in order to pay for all the foreign imports. meaning we import far more stuff than we export. And if you're importing stuff and you're on a gold standard, you're exporting your gold, and it wouldn't be but a short-lived time before we were completely broke. The United States does not produce enough to sustain the high standard of living that we exist today. We produce a consumer, we produce debt. And because of that, we are now sitting in a situation in which the ever-increasing amounts of new money that pours into the system is going to create the inequality that we now face, and it's going to drive it ever worse. There's no doubt about it. And you can see it from the Cantillon effect from hundreds of years ago. So now that we understand that new money comes in from debt issuance and not necessarily from the production of wonderful products that we send out to the world, when the new money comes in from debt issuance, we have to think, well, who has first access to the debt? The people who have first access to the debt, the people who are borrowing the money, what are they doing with it? Because this is really how it's going into overdrive the inequality, all right? This is going to create these circumstances in which that the average everyday person may never, ever, ever get an opportunity to have that American dream life where your regular average day job will be enough. The debt issuance and what it is that people do with it is very much like the idea of what happened with the gold. People could have said, nah, I don't want that fiat currency. I only want to accept gold. Very much like today, they could say, nah, I don't want that debt issuance. I want to be able to work for the money and buy it outright. People don't make those decisions. They don't make the proper decisions. It's human nature to acquire today to make sure that you can get yours today. And a lot of that has to do with what is it that I can promise you into the future. So now as we think about this and what it is that happens with the debt issuance, there's two decisions that people make. One, luxurious experiences, right? Take your credit card, go down to the restaurants, to the bars, go on vacation, go buy luxurious cars or houses that are far beyond your capabilities of meeting or making the mortgage payments on. Right? This is what ends up happening with a lot of people when they take out the debt issuance, is they literally put themselves into debt slavery, forcing themselves into an existence of ever hard work, frustrations, stress, terrible existence, with the appearance of actually doing well, right? They drive a nice car, nice house, nice clothes, and they have this appearance, but in the internal, they're suffering big time from it. Then you have another group of people who borrow that money and they buy cash flowing assets. They go out there and they buy apartment complexes. They go and buy businesses that are existing out there that are doing well. They use this debt to buy cash flowing assets, and then they have that debt paying them. So you have one group of people who are literally putting themselves into debt slavery, and another group of people who are putting themselves in a cash flow experience, both using debt to do it. Can you see how this separation takes place? This is going to get worse going into the future, only because the central banking system only has one path: more debt issuance. See, unless you collapse the entire central banking system, which a lot of people believe. I mean, hey, look, I got my in the Fed hat on. You can't read it right now because the YouTube thing goes backwards, but it says in the Fed right there, right? I understand the whole system. I understand what's going on here, and I understand what would happen if you do collapse the central banking system, and what kind of nightmare that would bring about. I mean, I'm feeling like I'm somewhat prepared for it because I kind of thought about it for a little bit, but I think the majority of the people would suffer in pain and misery on account of it. Most likely, we're not going to see a collapse of the central banking system unless it's beyond their control, which is a loss of confidence. Nobody that I know, right, has any idea on what they would do if there was no dollar. They haven't thought about it. They don't know where it is that they would go. They don't know what the network would look like. They have no idea what skill sets would be valuable or what items it is that they could trade. They have no clue. But they have a total understanding of their 401k. They have a total understanding of their tax, accountant. They have total understanding of all these other things out there that play into the system, that they rely on to make sure that they can continue to eat, but they have no clue about what it would be like without it. Therefore, I have no doubt in my mind that from here on, there will be no choice by the people other than central banking fiat currency debt issuance. And with that will come ever increasing amounts of inequality. Let's go check out the super chat real quick. All right, really appreciate what you do, UE, in your life. What were the key things that helped shifted your thinking, victim mindset to empower mindset? Thanks for all you do. Well, I think really ultimately it was the failure within itself. Like a lot of people are like, dude, what was it that was going on in your life that really made the shift? And you have to think like, a lot of you don't know me. It's just the story that I tell. And so, to understand that I was in a position in which that I didn't have anything really going on, right? I was in debt a lot, like, I don't know, 20 something plus $1,000 in debt, had no real idea of what it was that I was going to do to try and bring in income beyond that of my day job. I had broken down vehicle, alcoholic, all the other stuff that was going, like all the things, right? All the stuff. And ultimately, I just kind of came to the decision that I knew that I needed to do something different, right? And that I had to like, I mean, I was looking at my family and I was looking at my life and I'm thinking, man, is this really what you're going to do to them? Like, this is your responsibility. This is what you're going to do. Right? And I thought, no, I'm not. Right? And so the first thing I thought, well, what is it that you can do? I can give up drinking. Okay. So giving up drinking was a very big part of it. Right? Once you start stepping down that path, and you just start thinking to yourself, man, I need to do the next right thing. You know what it is. You know what the next right thing is. Sometimes the next right thing is just literally showing up to work on time. The next right thing is to take that $20 bill and go down and pay on your debt. The next right thing is always presenting itself if you choose to see it. And if you look for it, you will find it and you'll know what the next right thing is. And then you'll start building it up from there. So ultimately, it's just literally that decision making. That choice that says, man, I am no longer going to look for the external for blame, and I'm going to start figuring out what it is that I need to do in order to shift what it is that I have going on in my life in order to pursue that of the better existence. So really, it's the failure. It was the failure that did it to me. It says, I don't want to continue. Like, this is it. Like, if I take one more step down this particular path, it's over. Right? Like rock bottom kind of stuff. Maybe for some people, it doesn't need to go that far. Maybe for some people, it needs to go even worse. Right? Their rock bottom is way worse than that. This is nationalism mentality, the pursuit of wealth. No, my Victor, what does that say? Anyway, no, it's not. It's really not. That's your excuse for failing to try and understand what it is that you need to do to position yourself accordingly to deal with the fact that the economy is not going to be in a condition that's going to be approving for you, right? So ultimately, it's not a nationalism mentality or anything else like that. What I have is a belief that my skill set can position me for what I need in my life, which is going to be far different from what you need in your life. Now, me personally, I do not expect politicians, I do not expect banking systems, I do not expect anybody else out there to do anything other than what that is that they are doing, which is going to be probably more in line of benefiting the rich than it is going to be benefiting the working class individual. Because the working class individual is not nearly important to the economy. We essentially have two economies happening, and I think that's probably the key to it. Understanding that there was a time in which the average everyday working class individual was very important to the economy. You were working, producing, saving, consuming. You were doing all the stuff. One income was enough to produce for the entire household. Think about it. You were very important, right? But now the consumer, who is the important part of the economy, because we're not a producer, we're a consumer. That's the different types of economy, right? Producing, saving, consuming, and debt issuance. Completely different types of economies. So when we had an economy where the working class was very important, they were producer savers. They were very close to the money. You produce, you put that money, you put that production out there, and you have first access to it. Well, times have shifted, and that's not a political environment that did it. It was your raising of the standard of living. Like, you chose to have a better life. Right? And it wasn't you, it was your grandparents, right? But it was human nature, and this is what you're going to do. Anybody would do it. If you increase your income, you are going to raise your standard of living. However, there are a group of people out there who will postpone expenditures, will not increase their standard of living. They will save it, deploy that money to secure a decent interest beyond that of their occupation, and those people will become property owners. They will get blamed for creating inequality. Now, I have to think to myself, right now, I am postponing purchases. I have an old 97 Suburban. I'm not buying a new car for the intent of buying rental properties some point in the future. Like, I am literally have the mindset that's going to create the inequality. I don't want inequality, but I want to secure a decent rate of interest beyond that of my occupation. And I don't think that's too much to ask. And I don't think that's greedy. And I don't think that's capitalistic. I think that's just human nature, right? Is it capitalism? Sure. Is it greedy? Could be. Is it your opinion that this is the way it is and that people shouldn't do that? Maybe. My opinion says Cantillon recognized it a long time ago that there was a group of people who were going to postpone purchases so that they can secure a decent rate of interest beyond their occupation. And then at the same time, there will be a whole group of people who will have to work eagerly to acquire that what is needed for their life, but will not work any more than that of their maintenance. That's the unfortunate circumstances. There are a group of people who will postpone, wait, secure a decent rate of interest beyond their occupation, move themselves up, and then there's a whole group of people out there who will only work as hard as they need to, and they will be left behind. That is not anything to do with anything other than your decision on what it is that you have done with your life and your capabilities and your options. A $5,000 monthly payment for 30 years is suicide to me. Huh. I don't get it. Anyway, I don't understand. Thank you for the $2, but I'm not sure I understand what that means. All right. Okay. What is Nighter saying here, Victor? You're conflating the two, as one can become wealthy in money terms to then bite the hand that feeds them. Yeah. You think a farmer is nationalistic? The answer is no. I love a love of money to agree with the government principles equals money and servitude the support. Huh. Interesting. I'm very confused by that comment. I would have to sit there and contemplate that, because the way I look at things is money, gold, Bitcoin, my skills, the items, the tradable items I have, these are all individual different things. Right? My understanding of the government and my position with them, right? I don't allow them into my life. There's certain things that I have no other choice. I have a driver's license, I pay taxes, but I don't look at them as interfering in my existence, and I don't expect them to do anything to make my life better. The only thing I can think that they can do is to make my life more complicated. So I have no trust, no belief, and no expectations of the government to do anything of any kind of benefit for me. You know how relieving that is? You know how stress-free that is? Do you know how liberating the idea is that you are up to your own decision-making in what it is that you do, and you cannot rely on these people? Do you know how awesome of a feeling that really is? It's overwhelmingly freedom. It's overwhelming freedom. That's what comes from it. And so when I think about the way it is that I had positioned myself, it was just like, let them Let them do whatever it is that they feel that they need to do, right? Do they think that they need to come down with an idea of dangling Social Security over me and saying, hey man, you better listen to me or you may or may not get this? And I'd be like, well, I don't really expect it anyway, so whatever. You don't get to hold that thing over my head. Huh? Yeah, I worked a lot. I put a lot into it. I deserve it just like everybody else, but you're not going to hold that thing over my head. Go ahead, try it again, man. You got something else? You see, this is the mentality that I have towards it. I don't trust government at all. Like, none. Like, I have no trust that they're going to be there. I have no trust of their promises. I have no trust. Right? The only thing I trust in is the capabilities that I have. Do I have the skill sets? Do I have the understanding? Have I positioned myself accordingly? Right? These are the things that I think about. There is no help. There's no help coming. There's nobody showing up for you. Hey, even if they promised they said they would, they don't, because here's the thing. You're not, I mean, maybe you are, right? But most of us are not part of the 20% of household incomes, right? I mean, if anything, if I was in the 20%, I am at the 19.9999995%, right? I'm like right at the very edge. I am definitely working class individual who happened to stumble into the capabilities of being able to pay my bills on time, and that's an amazing feeling. I love it. But for the most part, people out there who are in the top 20% of household incomes, they represent the majority of the consumption out there. That means 80% of the people are hardly participating in the economy at all, except for the part of flipping burgers and throwing 2x4s in the back of a truck, maybe nailing them together. See, that's the unfortunate circumstances we're now in, is that 20%, 80% of the people used to be very important. We used to produce and be the producers who had first access to the money, and we spent that money into the economy. 80% of us were the consumers. Now it's just 20% of the people are the consumers. And with the top 20% of household incomes doing it better than 70% of the consumption, where is it that you fit in? You don't. You just don't. It's sad and it sucks. And then they talk to you like they're doing something that's benefiting you, but there's nothing out there that can be done that benefits you. You are on your own. Everything that they do is for the top 20%. Think about it. Has inequality shrank with anything that they have ever done? Like a single time in history, has you ever seen inequality shrink? Through all the actions, all the steps, all the government intervention, everything that they do, has it ever happened? No. You know why? It's because there's a central banking system that keeps that from happening. As long as you have a central banking system, you will have new debt issuance and you will have ever increasing amounts of separation between the rich and the poor. Very little doubt in my mind. There's nothing that they can do to stop that. They can promise you all kinds of stuff, right? They can promise you, hey, man, we're going to tax the hell out of them and we're going to give you a whole bunch of, like, money injections down there at the bottom. But it's not up to the decisions of the politician. It's your decision on what it is that you've done with the money. If you take that money and you blast it on good time, you will remain poor. If you take that money and you deploy it to a return on capital investments, most likely you will end up on the other side of the wedge. Now, if you had that idea ahead of time, then you wouldn't have probably gotten the money injection in the first place, because you have already positioned yourself on the other side of the wedge. That's where I'm getting at. People have a misunderstanding of what it is that's taken place simply because they do not know what to do with the money. Some people really know what to do with it. Hold on one second, guys. Let me turn my Wi-Fi off. It's probably glitching on you. But I disagree. Simply using the dollar supports the system, creating new money more so than circulating old ones. Yeah. Even never wanted to fit in, worked for me. Huh. Everyone wants community. I don't know. I mean, I would think, I think everybody would want, like, some sort of network. Personal responsibility and sacrifice scares people so much they become blind to logic and reason and become the mob. Well, and see, that's the unfortunate situation most people end up facing, is because unless you can do that, unless you can take responsibility for yourself, then you'll never be able to then say, okay, I'm going to put my $50 towards something. Like I'm going to go and, put it towards a savings so I can get that rental property, right? Little pieces at a time to finally get there. I'm going to take this $50. I'm going to go buy some silver. I'm going to take this $50, go buy Bitcoin. I'm going to take this $50 and put it somewhere, somehow, to have some sort of return at some point in the future. I don't know what that is, but I'm going to figure it out. You know how many people are scared to do that? They're scared to do that. Like, to me, that's what I like. That's what I find fun and exciting. Is just like, okay, cool. I just got paid again. Where is it that I can put some money? Like, what's down right now that I could go and drop $50 on? Other people are like, oh no, that's like gambling. Let's go shoot some pool. Like you want to go spend the $50 at the bar, but you don't want to put it towards. Okay, yeah, let's go. Let's go shoot some pool. I got paid. I dropped my investments. I got some money. Let's go shoot some pool. Right? I don't know, but this is the mentality that a lot of people have, and it's unfortunate because if you do not shift your mentality into being that capitalistic mindset, then you're gonna get left behind. There's very little doubt. Just think about it. Is there anything, like, even when they did the money injection, like during COVID or whatever, they shrank inequality for like literally like a second. And it was just this very minor dip for just a very short amount of time. You know why? Because all of a sudden household savings just all blew up. People all of a sudden had this money and they had nowhere to go. And they're like, oh, look at all the savings we got. And then they nickel and dimed it all away. And where did it go? Right up to the top, and the top got wealthy and the poor just stayed poor. It's their own decision making that's doing it. Right? Much like their decision to accept fiat as opposed to rejecting it when it came time to issue out, to sever itself from the gold standard. Right? It was the same thing. You guys are running out of time to afford a rental property on a working class income. Do not delay. I think that's probably a little bit of a fear tactic because really, even if you like, that's if you want to own it outright. I think you, as an individual, working class person, $20 at a time or even less, maybe, can find a real estate investment trust or an ETF or some sort of position within the real estate. Right? You don't have to be the outright property owner, but you can position yourself in it, right? Like not necessarily outright owning it, but owning a piece of it. And by owning a piece of it, you're still in it. Regardless of somebody else's perception. Oh, you got to own the whole thing, right? Which is really awesome for, the property owners who do own the whole thing. They have a lot to it, but you can alleviate a lot of the responsibilities or anything else as far as maintenance and all that just by simply getting in position to take advantage of it. And that's easy to do through many of the online brokerages. I mean, anybody who is 18 years old should have some sort of ability to buy stocks and other assets online and literally be doing it from an early age. You start at 18 years old, you're starting to buy stuff like this at 18. You know how awesome it'll be by the time you're 65 years old, having positioned yourself the entire time? All right, best thing I did for myself was stop drinking in 2018. I'm debt free and make sacrifices every day to stack cash and assets. Also, daily 2001 Prius. Right. And see, like this is essentially the mentality that you really need to take on in order to secure yourself that decent rate of interest beyond that of your occupation. Like Cantillon was saying, that so few people actually do. I mean, you think about it. So I know a lot of people who like make a lot of money. Like they are property owners. Some of them make a lot of money, right? I mean, I met tons of people here on YouTube and just, understanding having med connections like everybody at the Rebel Capitalist and stuff. I mean, my view of like income from people and knowing them personally goes from all the way from the gutter to the highest levels. And it's just incredible to have this sort of connection with people and still being like, just an average everyday dude in order to have this sort of view. It's incredible, right? Most of the wealthy elite have no idea the struggles that the average everyday worker faces. They have no clue how stressful it is. They have no idea, right? Some of them had been, like at one time, very poor or broke or didn't have a whole lot in their life, and they've been able to acquire the wealth. They do not live in today's economy. They not, I mean, they live in today's economy, but they live in as a wealthy individual. They do not live as a poor working class individual in today's economy. It's not the same game. Right? It's not the same game anymore, and it's not even the same place. And as I hear people talk about, oh, well, if the poor did, and if the poor, whatever, and I'm like, yeah, you're kind of clueless, bro. Right? You've been too rich too long to really have a good understanding of what it is that's taking place down here. Like, they just don't get it. And very much on the flip side of it, I find the argument from the poor or the working class individual blaming the wealthy elite in almost the same fashion. Oh, they're greedy. If they weren't so greedy, if they did, if, right? They have all these things. And I think to myself, you can do what they did. There's nothing stopping you from doing exactly what they did. Right? It's not the same game. Right? You got to play by a little bit different rules. You got to take a little bit different strategy. But ultimately, you can do what they did. They bought cash flowing assets. How do you acquire those things? Do you work hard for them? Do you borrow? Do you partner? What do you do? Right? But you need to do what they did if you want to, if you want to have what it is that they have. Otherwise, you can just expect to be broken, poor, and lonely. Right? Maybe not lonely, broken, poor, Smart move, Kirk. With these overinflated prices, by the time you have a correction, the property is liability and underwater. God, you know how many times I've heard that? All right. I was hoping energy bills would go down under Trump. Just keeps exploding. I didn't think anything of benefit would come from Trump. So that's a real bummer. Who was that? Kirk? God, I can't. I'm sorry, bro. I mean, I didn't think you had that kind of faith in Trump, but ultimately, that's the consequences of putting a belief in a system or in an individual out there to do anything that's going to benefit your life. You were hoping for better energy prices coming from this administration. Bad move. You hope for something from somebody else, and especially an administration, to do the right thing, to put it in a position that's going to benefit you. Yeah, no wonder. There's no doubt in my mind that wouldn't happen, right? It is just, I don't know. To me, I think about what it is that they do, and they don't do anything to benefit me. I cannot find anything out there that they do that benefits my life. The only thing that they can do is interfere or inhibit or something of that nature. Yeah. I work so much in 6 days, I feel like I have a million miles. Huh. Well, what about low gas prices for the first term? Can you ignore that fact? There was low gas prices? I mean, lower gas prices. Were there low gas prices? I mean, I don't know where that comes from. That really doesn't have anything to do with the Trump administration or anything that he does. This is market conditions. I mean, is there stuff that, can be done to kind of manipulate the market for a short term so that you can see some price manipulations that happen, strategic oil reserve depletions and then, stacking up and stuff like that? Absolutely, you can. But this is, again, it's short-lived and usually ends up being very speculative and ends up with a correction. And people wonder why it didn't play out the way that they were anticipating. I mean, people give too much credit to the politicians. That's all there is to it. They give them too much credit. They think that they can do more than they can. And that's why they end up doing a lot of what they do, is because people believe it. Right? And so they end up talking a lot and creating a lot of tension amongst, the two parties in order to maintain that attention, in order to create the power pendulum, to create the people's expectations and belief systems to align with that so that they can extract that power from them. It doesn't provide you with anything. I can't think of anything. People are all like, oh man, Biden's going to totally ruin your life and you're not going to you're not going to have anything and all this other stuff. And then, they say the same thing about Trump. And every single time I hear that, I think to myself, is that you're talking about, or is it me you're talking about? Because I've increased my net wealth. I've increased everything that, like, I'm heading in the direction that I want to go, regardless of who it is that's president. They don't stop me. They can't. There's nothing that they can do to stop me. That's the beauty of the whole thing, right? It was just like they say, "Oh man, they can stop you," and it was just like, "Hey man, there's my competition." All those people who are saying they're going to try and stop me, right? There's my competition. They're going to stop you, right? And by stopping you, it gives me more room. All right. Bean burrito for 35 cents. Yes, Taco Bell. How much now? All right. My folks are trying. See, again, like, these are the type of comments that, like, I don't even take in that sort of subconscious thought. It was this back then and it's this now. Like, how come? Like, think about it. That's dollar destruction. Yeah, no kidding, it is. It's called a currency. It's called a fiat currency, and fiat currencies do not hold value, period. End of story. I don't know why anybody would expect it to. Like, I earned $1 20 years ago. I do not expect it to have the same purchasing power 20 years later. People who do have that expectation have an expectation of something that it is not. It is not a store of value. It doesn't hold purchasing power. It hasn't done that for a very long time. And to think or dream or wish or pray that it does is literally being, like, very delusional and, like, just far off. Like, you just can't, it doesn't work like that. It just doesn't do it, you know? And so once you understand that it's a currency and it's a fiat currency and it's meant to trade goods and services for other goods and services, and that's all you expect it to do is to trade the goods and services for other goods and services, then that's what you use it for. You just don't use it to store value. You don't think about a burrito costing 35 cents back in the day and how much it costs today because you don't care. You just simply don't care. It's like, yeah, no kidding. It's not like it was 35 cents in gold and now you got 35 cents in gold today. Like, it probably is the same amount. Right? In fact, you could probably get more burritos with the same amount of gold today than you did back in the day. So really, you should have had it in gold. That's what saves your purchasing power. Put it in Bitcoin. That will save your purchasing power. Now, will it do it in a single purchase? No, but if you dollar cost average over time, absolutely. There's no evidence that shows anything different. Dollar cost average into Bitcoin for 4 years and you're almost guaranteed you'll be up. That's what Lynn Alden said to me when I point blank asked her. It was just like at the Rebel Capitalist cocktail party, and I think, what was that, Miami, right? I straight up asked her. It was just like, how is it that I can invest into Bitcoin and time it perfectly? How do I do that? And she said, you can't. There's no way of doing that. But if you dollar cost average for 4 years, even if you start at the top of the market, there is nothing in their economic models that will show that you will be down, but you should be up. And so from that day, I did it, and sure enough, I killed it. I killed it in Bitcoin. Dollar cost average for 4 years inside of a Cash App. I think I put something like maybe $5,000 into it, and it's now worth $17,000. Right? It's not hard. You just have to be committed to the outcome, and you have to actually understand that there is nothing that anybody else is going to do to make your life any better than it is. Only you can do that. If anyone uses common sense as an argument, you can discount anything we have said and ever will say. If you have equity in your house and converted equity into BTC, do the math. TikTok. Nonsense is common. Yeah, it sure is, all-nighter. Dollar cost average now while you can. I mean, it's the only thing that seems to have worked out for me. I dollar cost average in anything. I hardly ever buy anything more than $50 at a time. And the only thing that I have recently purchased more than $50 at a time was buying back the 10-ounce silver bars that I had used as collateral to get the loan for this truck. Right? Ultimately, there were car payments buying my silver back. I lived on 25-cent El Chorrito burritos a couple of years in the 79, saved up and down payment for beginner home. Saved up down payment. There you go. What could possibly go wrong? How long do you guys want to hang out for? We got 461 people watching with 124 likes. If you go out and hit that like button, get it up with 461 people, we should have it at least at 200 likes. Get it up to 200 likes in the next 10 minutes, and we'll stick around for a little longer. Otherwise, we'll call it at an hour. So everybody run out there, hit that like button right now. Wayne says, boom. Holding Bitcoin since 2017. That was B Collector Rick. My goal, 279 ounce. Damned, I'm dumb. All right. The blockchain, who likes to get paid? Zipcoin. Huh. How is the trucking industry? You know, that's pretty interesting. Like, I do know a few truckers, and the things that like the guys that I know haul end up being a lot like equipment, logs, stuff like that. It's not really necessarily freight being moved around the country. However, I do get a lot of calls from trucking brokerages looking to find freight to haul. Like they have capacity, trucking capacity, and they're looking for items to fill up that capacity. And now, during COVID, when we had a trucking shortage, I never heard from these guys for a while. Like they disappeared. But it was probably about a year and a half ago, they started calling, right? And they just call randomly. They're just like, I think they just sit in front of a computer screen, just calling random places, looking for stuff to haul around. And so we started getting these calls coming in from these shipping brokerages, right? Well, just recently, like it started about a year and a half ago. Well, recently that's kind of ramped up a bit where we're getting quite a bit of those calls, and I can hear the other salesmen taking the calls as well. So to me, that shows that trucking has slowed down quite a bit, and there's a lot of capacity out there. But that is anecdotal evidence. But again, it's pretty preliminary stuff when I hear those shipping brokerages calling. That's usually a sign that trucking is slowing down, and then you find the evidence of it showing up in the data. All right. Have you seen Debt Clock PDF of dividend dollar? Maybe not recently. Started with silver at $1.90 an ounce. Long time, folks. 1979. Wow. Trucking has been down all year. Where's Deja? Missing you, home girl. Yeah, she hasn't popped up yet, has she? Do a meet and greet in Astoria. All right, I can set one of those up. There's no trucking shortage. Lots of trucking companies going out of business. No, I didn't say there was a trucking shortage. I said there's a lot of capacity, right? That's people with trucks looking to haul stuff. What they're missing is freight, right? That's the shortage. There's a shortage of freight, and that's impacting the trucking companies, and the trucking companies are going out of business because they can't find the freight to haul because there's overcapacity of truckers. Coin collecting and silver searching since 1965. Right on. All right. America made make the system. New system rolls in. Hopefully never. Huh. Happy Sunday, y'all. All right. They got all the eyes on the debt clock a year ago, but look at it now. All right. Hit the like button, guys. Yeah, let's see. We're at 448 people with 163 likes. We got 5 more minutes. We get the like button up to 200 thumbs up, and we'll continue the live stream. Otherwise, we'll call it at an hour. I mean, again, I think understanding the Cantillon effect, understanding how the inequality is created from the new debt issuance and how that new debt issuance is used by the people and how it is that they position themselves to either be on the bottom or the top side of the wedge. I think that's critical to understanding why it is that we have the conditions that we have today. You can always create laws to try and prevent the people from behaving like humans. But that's like, they're going to find a workaround for it, and they're going to end up doing what it is that they do because, well, we can recognize it from hundreds of years ago. You can get this essay off of Amazon. There's a link down in the description to an affiliate link where I will get a commission for every sale of this particular essay, but you do not have to buy the essay off of the Amazon affiliate link. You can get the essay for free at the Mises Institute. Just type into Google search Cantillon essay on economic theory, and you can go and search for that Mises Institute PDF, download it, read through the entire essay, but especially the chapters 6, 7, and 8. It's in part 2 of the essay, 6, 7, and 8, the increase and decrease of money to the state. Oh, so telling of the situation that we are now facing. So you can support the Uneducated Economist by buying that essay off of Amazon, or buy anything off of Amazon. Just click on that affiliate link first, and anything you put in your cart for the next 24 hours and purchase in the next 30 days, I will also get a commission on. So it's a great way to support the Uneducated Economist. All right, 500 plus 100 gold certificates are in the works now. The golden rule. Made more X with alts than the granddaddy. Oh, we're just pushing coins here. Okay. The dividend dollar is going to go up 3% in a year. Will be backed up by 10% metas, 5% stocks, 5% housing. It's absolutely hilarious. The black-pilled economists. It's on the Debt Clock website. Do you think there will be a war before the recession or after? I mean, isn't there a war now? Are you talking about like the United States involved in war, or aren't we already? Like, I mean, I already thought that was happening. It's just kind of different levels of fighting, isn't it? All right. Came in late, hitting the road. I'll leave. Yep. On for the dog. I did a tickle a thumb. All right. What is it, Memory Man? I never thought of the pyramid as a specifically Egyptian. Has its roots much deeper than Egypt. I think ancient mysteries. Read the PDF and do a stream on it, please. What are you talking about? Read the PDF on what? My grandpa gave me a great education, precious metals, 1979, miss him dearly. I meant troops on the ground, all at war. Oh, probably not. No, I can't imagine. I don't know, maybe. I mean, who knows? I mean, ultimately, it all goes down to war, right? You got currency wars, which leads to trade wars, which leads to real wars. Like, we went through currency wars, essentially, after the great financial crisis. We are now facing the trade wars, and essentially this will end up being into the real wars. You know, I think probably the difference that we're going to see now is that really these wars were to fight over the gold. You know, when you have a concentration, like here you are, if you're a manufacturer and you have some sort of ability to be industrious and you're out there making a bunch of money, and that money is concentrating to you. Like, so back in the day, back in Cantillon's day, you have to think, like, you know, these particular regions, these countries, these nations, they all of a sudden accumulated a lot of gold. Well, they knew, right, that they no longer have new money coming in, and that the money is leaving. And that as the money leaves, the people are going to fall into poverty, pain, and misery. Right? They start making rules that say, no, the gold can't leave. Right? And as they make these rules that say the gold can't leave, they start increasing the punishment. Right? You take the gold out of the country, we'll chop your head off, you know, kind of thing. Well, this starts creating risk, a lot of risk. Well, with risk comes reward. So now the gold becomes even increasingly more valuable, and the people become even more desperate, and the fighting gets harder, right? And so this is essentially the basis of it all. Like, really, you can relate it all the way down, because Cantillon actually describes it way back into, like, the way he calls it is the savages of America, right? So, you know, he's talking about the United States. You know, well, it wasn't the United States back in his day, but he was talking about the Native Americans here in North America. and how they would fight these bloody battles over hunting territories. Right? And now, if you think about it, this is ultimately economics. Right? We all need to eat, and there's only so much. There's only so much resources. So here you had these, tribes that were battling over hunting grounds simply because there just wasn't enough of them to live there. Like, either we do this or we starve, right? So they fight for these hunting grounds. That's ultimately the basis of economics right there. You can start complicating the situation saying, hey, well, maybe if we figure out how to produce more food, the rest of us can live here. Well, you produce more food, you can produce more people. And you produce more people, now you have people who have to govern these people, and you end up with all the issues that start coming from governance. So understanding like war is a part of the economy. It's essentially the cleansing of the amount of people out there in order to fit into the amount of resources that are available. And that's kind of scary and sad, but it's also like part of nature if you really think about it. Overpopulations get decimated with disease and starvation. It's just a natural, consequence of having overabundance at some point in your life. You end up facing the consequences when the resources churn off, or there's just not enough abundance anymore to maintain that. It's just the way it is. So is there going to be war? Probably of some sort. It's just kind of the way it is. This is kind of the way it goes down. All right, guys, we're at 188 likes. You were like 12 likes away from making it. I'll give you another 2 minutes. We'll take it to an hour and 5. If you can get 12 more likes in there, we'll stick around for a little bit longer. Otherwise, we'll call it quits at an hour and 5. I just want to give you one last chance to stick it out for a little longer if we want to. Recessions are needed in an exponential growing population. It's only logical. Yeah, and I mean, the thing is about recessions is that they occur every 7 to 12 years. And to think about the idea of the nation going through, like, I don't know how many countless depressions. I mean, I don't know, 12 depressions or something like that. So it's something that's very regular. It's cyclical. It's something that's going to take place within this economy. Hey, right on, guys. We got it up to 213. We'll stick it out for another half hour or so. So you have to think about it. It is very cyclical that this occurs, in which that you have the rise and fall of business cycles. And when you have the rise, everybody's super excited and the abundance is there and everybody's like making money and they're all like joyful about the experience. And then it flips and then you start having the down cycle and slower, sales, less money coming in, defaults start to rise, and then you have the painful experience. But this is like the natural occurring. It's like anything else out there, it's all cyclical. Thoughts on investing in palladium. So here's the thing that I find about precious metals is that if you are really going into precious metals, you have to ask yourself, why is it that I am buying this? Like, are you buying it for the speculative asset that you're going to be able to sell it into the future for a higher price? I mean, ultimately, this is the greater fool theory. And I'm not trying to call anybody who buys silver or gold a fool. I buy silver and gold myself. But when you think about it in this fashion, this is how the investment community looks at it, is that if you buy something with no other expectations, then you're going to be able to sell it for a higher price going into the future. That's called the greater fool theory. So let's think about it in this fashion. Okay, so palladium. Is palladium something that is going to be very useful going into the future? Most likely. I mean, it's a precious metal. It's an industrious metal, and it gets used in, a lot of things out there. But I don't know a single person out there who knows anything about palladium. Like, I could go to every single person that I know personally and ask them to tell me everything that they know about palladium, and outside of the word, nothing. Right? They know nothing about it. And so if it's time to bug out or do a trade or figure out what it is that I need to do, palladium is not exactly like my number one choice, because who am I going to go to in order to get into fiat or trade it for something that I want? You got to have a pretty selective community. You have to know exactly who it is that you can go to, and that might be very limited. The dollar move itself in it, that might be a good position to go into. As just like anything else, there's a limited amount of it out there, and if the demand for it exceeds the capability or exceeds the supply, prices are going to rise. So if you're in that kind of thought pattern, that it's going to have this sort of increase in demand and that you'll be able to sell it into the future for a higher price, again, that's kind of like your speculative move. I don't look at silver that way. Like, I look at silver as an insurance policy that gets me outside of that third party claim. And by having something outside of that third party claim, now I have the ability to sleep at night, because whatever it is that I got going on with stocks or bonds or 401k or whatever, although it's a big significant portion of my wealth, it isn't everything, right? And if that whole system collapses, I still have means. I still have an ability to do what it is that I need to do in order to survive. So I think about it in that fashion. I don't think about it as an investment. I think about it as an insurance policy. So for me, having it as an insurance policy means that I need to be able to liquidate this thing very quickly. I need to be able to take it down and trade it at different locations, have a network of people I can trade it with, even just go down to the local tavern and say, hey man, I got a Silver Eagle. Anybody want to give me 25 bucks for it, 30 bucks for it? You could sell it cheaply, may get under spot price for it, but you can get a few dollars, get some gas, and get out of Dodge, right? That's the whole point. It's an insurance policy. Doing that with palladium might be a little bit more difficult, but silver, I have very little doubt in my mind that I would be able to do that in just about any town, any city, anywhere in this country. Silver has that unique characteristic and feature to it, right? Unlike anything else. Like, I don't even think gold could do that. So anyway, that's just my thoughts on that. All right. Average person needs diversity in its portfolio. Absolutely. The gold standard has returned to the rest of the world. Wake up, people. It hasn't. That's what's crazy about it. It really hasn't, and it's not going to. Now, your understanding of it is because you're giving it meaning that way. You're looking at China increasing their gold holdings and all these other nations that are talking about, going to a gold standard or something of that nature. But ultimately, that's going to be a very far-fetched, very distant possibility. Ultimately, you have to really understand Gresham's law. Gresham's law means that bad currency will chase out good currency. And the people who look at the gold standard coming back, or like BRICS nations going on a gold standard, choose to ignore the fact that the dollar is still the reserve currency. And in fact, there is more foreign holdings of U.S. Treasury debt today than there has been in just about any time in history. So to think that nations are getting out of the dollar is not right. More foreign holdings of U.S. Treasury debt today than in any time in history. Of course, that's on account that there's more debt issuance now than any time in history, so there's more capability for them to hold more. But besides that, it's still more now than there ever has been. So so it's not like they're abandoning the dollar. They're getting dollar denominated asset. They're getting US Treasuries. They're holding that as an asset on their balance sheets. At the same time, they're writing debts that are due in dollars. All the BRICS nations are doing this. Maybe not so much Russia, but definitely all the rest of the nations are. The BRICS nations are writing sovereign debts. That means like Brazil wrote a debt, right? It says, I, Brazil, owe you, foreign entity out there, 100 US dollars. And they put that debt into circulation. This doesn't have anything to do with the United States. Doesn't have anything to do with our government. Doesn't have anything to do with our banking system. Doesn't have anything to do with our people. Doesn't have anything to do with our investors. This has something to do with Brazil and some other entity out there. And they wrote a debt that is due in dollars. That means Brazil has to come up with dollars to pay that debt back. That debt that Brazil wrote gets used like dollars. Right? And this is happening to all kinds of nations and entities and corporations and people all over the world, all writing debts that are due in dollars that have nothing to do with the United States. All those debts get used like dollars. Dollar dominance is by far, so like the most extremely used currency beyond imagination. Like, Second place is such a distant seconds that you have to squint with binoculars and telescopes and magnifying glasses to see where it is. It's like, man, I don't think it's there. There is such a distance to it. There's nobody who even comes close to competing to the amount of debt issuance that the dollar has done. Right? Not just the United States writing debts, other nations writing debts that are doing dollars. Right? So once you understand that's the problem that the other nations are going to face, is that they cannot create a currency in magnitudes, in proportions that are even going to come remotely close to competing to what the dollar has done. They just don't do it. They're not going to. And so the dollar is not going anywhere. Gold is not going to replace the dollar so long as the dollar exists. Because the moment that you introduce gold into the trade, you will find people will hoard the gold and give you dollars, and they will keep the gold for themselves. That's what Gresham's law is. So, I mean, just think about it like this for just a second. You come to me and you want to buy the Cantillon essay off of me, right? And you're like, hey, man, I got gold or I got dollars. Which one will you accept? And I'm telling you, well, for this essay, I'll take either one of those. I'll take gold or cash. Which one are you going to give me? Are you really going to give me that gold coin, or are you going to give me the cash? You're going to give me the dollars, right? That's what everybody would do, because the dollars are what's in circulation. That's what's providing the economic transactions. The gold is security, it's safety, it's savings. It's not what's being used for transactions. Fiat currency, it's the currency that's being used. Currency is not money. Gold is money. Gold holds value. Gold can do transactions, yes, but it's not the same as currency. Currency is not the same as money. Right? Currency is meant to do transactions, period. Trade goods and services for other goods and services. Once you understand it and see it that way, it makes a whole lot more sense that the rest of the nations are not going to switch over to a gold standard unless they just simply don't want to do transactions and they want to starve, find themselves in pain and misery, unless they happen to be the one production nation out there that can produce more than it sells and people are actually buying it from them. And if people around the world are willing to give them their gold for their production, then that's their fault for giving it all to them, for giving it all up. I just don't see it happening. All right. Quit drinking 8 months ago, got out of debt, stacking gold and silver. I'm ready for the monetary games. Well, right on, Kevin. Good for you, man. It's amazing on how many stories I hear about it. It was just like, dude, I was watching one of your videos and I thought to myself, man, I have been drinking a lot. And I decided that I wasn't going to drink tonight. And actually, I've come to the conclusion that drinking was part of my problems. And since I've given it all up, I find my savings has increased. I find myself out of debt. I find myself on a good path. I don't know how many times I've heard this story. And I think to myself, that's exactly what happened to me, right? Like I told that story and then people said, dude, I heard that and I quit drinking. And then all of a sudden I found that I had money in my pocket. I was able to pay off my debts. I found connections were easier. I found myself motivated and that I was actually finding opportunities presenting themselves in a more profound way because I wasn't drunk to say, hey, man, I can't take advantage of this opportunity because I'd rather go drinking, right? All of a sudden, it was just like, I'm not drinking. I have all the opportunities in the world to go do whatever I want, right? I don't know how many times I denied myself a really good opportunity because I wanted to go drinking instead. It was like, oh, man, I'm sorry. I can't go to that thing because really, ultimately, I just want to go crack beers. Like, I literally did that to myself a lot. And when I didn't have the excuse of I want to go crack beers anymore, I didn't have an excuse at all. All of a sudden, I was like, yeah, I'll go. I mean, what else I got going on? Nothing. I'm just going to go home, right? I mean, if I just go home and I'm not going to do anything, might as well do something. So, yeah, I'll go do that. What is it? You know? All right. Fiat flies between us all. Use it. Buy security when you can. You don't need it. Leave it to your smart kids, educate them. It's on you. There it is. That was a great comment. Who is that? The Rooster? Is that what what is that? The Roaster? What does that say? The Rooster 6104. Yep, I totally agree. Crypto may be a Trojan horse. I don't know. BTC is different, but one must study and understand. Studying is real investment into BTC. Time is greater than money. Yeah. Everything in moderation apart from Bitcoin. Buy that like a crackhead. Yeah. And that's just the thing. I mean, Bitcoin, there's no more. That's it. There's like the supply is essentially out. So there's really not a whole lot more that's coming in. And when it does come in, it's just going to trickle in. So essentially everything is out now. And then how many Bitcoins have been, lost forever? Like lots of Bitcoin has been lost forever, never to return again. I mean, who knows what the estimates are? I mean, they say like, as much as like 4 million or even who knows, like after that. So really there's like 15 million coins that are available for the entire globe. I mean, getting just one Bitcoin is incredibly rare. Having half a Bitcoin is rare. Having one is incredibly rare. Having more than one is absolutely like beyond unique, right? It is just like not something that, think about it. Really owning one Bitcoin is something that less than 15 million people will be able to do because of the lost Bitcoins that are out there. All right? There's only 19 available out there. So really only 19 million people could ever own one Bitcoin. By owning one Bitcoin, do you realize how unique of a situation you would be in? That's incredible to think about, right? So even if it's not like, even if it, like you just don't even believe in it at all, think about the rarity of it. That is incredible. And it's able to do purchases, make transactions with anybody, anywhere, at any time, without interference. Right? Like I know a lot of people say, oh no, there's all these things that they can do. Okay, that's great. Ultimately, you set a motion, you set that transaction into motion, there's nothing that can stop it. Right? That means governments and all that, they're not involved. That is so cool. As an anarchist, I love that idea. That the governments are simply, like they're involved in the idea, hey, we can track and trace and do all this other stuff, but they can't stop it. That's what I like. They can't stop it. Bitcoin is like gold. Nobody will waste it. Some people have wasted it, I think, but I think people are getting smarter about it. Could be just a few million people with one Bitcoin or more in the end. That's right. I mean, as the concentration, you think about it, people who have thousands of Bitcoins or millions of Bitcoins or something. I mean, that's incredible to think how reduced of an amount of supply there is really available for the people out there. There's not that much. It's just simply not that much. So to me, loading up on Bitcoin is a no-brainer. I mean, the fact that the supply is essentially out, there's no more that's going to be made, or the amount that is going to be, introduced is just going to be a trickle, like not really increasing the supply by any kind of significance. That's it. That's all you need to know, man. And so buying, like $50 at a time where it doesn't really hurt you, you don't really think about it much. $50 once a week, once a month. Yeah, definitely put you in a good spot. Hola, brah. It's been a while. I sent you that side mirror on the Toyota. Oh, did you? Well, thank you so much, man. I have to tell you, my friend, I sold that car to my friend's daughter who is getting a start in life. She just graduated high school. She's going to schools or, going to go to college. She's got a part-time job, living on her own. And that $500 car was exactly what she needed in order to get that start in the life that she really needed, to position her for good, reliable transportation. I mean, it only had 165,000 miles on it. She took it to her mechanic friend of hers. He went through it from, bumper to bumper. Said other than the look, he says other than the actual look of the car, he says it's in fantastic shape and that she should at least get another 100,000 miles out of this car. So it made me feel good to be able to, like share that opportunity that I was able to get from having that cheap car, putting me in a position that I could get to work reliably every single day using that vehicle, knowing that I could have cheap insurance, cheap gas, cheap everything about the vehicle, cheap maintenance. And it really just put me in a much better position to think that, man, I'm able to now share that uniqueness of that vehicle with another person to carry on, the ability to position themselves accordingly with it. I can't think of anything more awesome, right? So thank you for sending me that mirror. A lot of you watched the video in which that the mirror was actually taken off by a side swiping of my vehicle. So essentially I had come out from, I think I was the post office, or I was going to the post office anyway. I can't remember exactly where I was at, but I came out and I found that the mirror had been like taken off my car, and then it had been like essentially sideswiped. It didn't damage the vehicle like you could, and like it would just barely grazed it. You know what I'm saying? It's like it didn't damage it that bad, like you couldn't open or close the doors. But it did take the mirror off, and people asked, "Are you going to replace the mirror?" And I'm like, "Nah, probably not. I only like 2-minute drive to work. I was just like, I just won't worry about it." Homeboy sent me the mirror in the mail. So anyway, gave me something to do that afternoon, and I put that mirror on. The car rules. Yeah, that car does rule. And I told her, I said, I told my friend's daughter, I'm like, hey, you should start a YouTube channel and talk about how it is that this car has given you a good position to then get to work, to save money, to do all that kind of thing. I told her to start a YouTube channel and base it around the purchasing of that car and just kind of talk about her life and how she's getting started and stuff. And she was like, no way. And I'm like, I could probably get you 10,000 subscribers in like no time at all, just by simply you owning that car. And, and it'll start paying for, all kinds of stuff. And she was just like way overwhelmed by the idea, and she was like, absolutely not. I'm like, well, oh well. Yeah. Someone went postal on the mirror. Was it you? How do you say that? Flawee? Like Hawaii? Flawee? Flawee? Anyway, you feel guilty? Can Bitcoin replace gold? No. In fact, that's a good question, because really, if you think about it, people asked me that question before. Is like Bitcoin better than gold, or is gold better than Bitcoin? And so I have to ask myself, okay, let's just examine the world for just a minute without gold, right? We would have a very unusual experience without gold. I mean, I just think about all this, just the computer technologies in itself and how it relies on the precious metals. So if you removed gold from our economy, from our existence, we would not have the same thing happening. In fact, I would even question whether or not Bitcoin would even be a possibility if it wasn't for the existence of gold. Now, if you remove Bitcoin from existence, not a lot changes. Like, maybe some people's, like the way they, have their wealth portfolio or something like that might change. But the overall economy probably wouldn't function much differently than it is today. Like, there would probably be no changes. So if you remove gold, you would have profound changes. If you remove Bitcoin, you would have essentially no changes. So which one's greater? Gold is by far greater than Bitcoin. By far. Right? You remove gold, you essentially remove Bitcoin. But if you remove Bitcoin, nothing really changes. All right. This is why I love Simon. That is really kind. What is that? Huh. I'm lazy at typing and abbreviated all I can. Chaos, what is it? Safety Amos says the only thing that could stop Bitcoin is if the world adopts a gold standard. The world ain't gonna stop the gold standard, and there's nothing that's gonna stop Bitcoin. So, no, yeah, like, I mean, there's no changes to the central banking system. All right. We are going to have ever increasing amounts of fiat currency issuance that's going to separate the rich from the poor. The inequality will grow. There is very little doubt in my mind from any of that. There is a far off concept of switching to a different type of economy, like a gold standard economy or a Bitcoin based economy or something like that. But that is only if we have an absolute collapse of the fiat currency system, the central banking system. Now, people banking and thinking and positioning for this inevitable collapse of the fiat currency system is probably going to be waiting their entire life and never find it taking place. Um, and that's just, and I mean, it's just the way it's going to end up going down. They have, like, you got to think the central banking system is going to fight for survival. They are going to figure out ways to continue on with the debt issuance. And if they move into a digital, tokenized world, then the limitations it's unlimited. You know, how far it could go. And if they can continue into the debt issuance and new money, then there's going to be ever increasing amounts of separation. So the split economy now that is really more geared towards the top 20% who do the majority of the consumption, if this continues on, the bottom 80% are going to suffer in misery big time. And it's not going to be like in misery in the sense of like you're going to starve and all that. It won't be like that. The miserable experience is just not being able to have anything in your life. Like you won't own anything. Cars will be too expensive. Apartments will be too expensive. Food will be like, I mean, food and living standards and all this other stuff will probably end up being provided to you, but it's going to be like cheap in like, how do I say, like like cramped, tight conditions. Essentially, like, you know, I don't know, dealing with the masses. I don't know how to quite describe what it's going to end up going like, because, you know, again, like nobody knows how far or how big this could actually go. But when you consider like the average everyday person not really participating or having the capabilities of participating in the economy in the same way that the top 20% can do, then most likely the living conditions are going to be very poor. And that's kind of what I see going into the future. That's why it's so critically important to position yourself accordingly. Like, cut back on all those expenses, all those luxurious experiences, and move into something that is going to have a return on your capital investment. I mean, anything at all, even if it is in the beginning, just to get into gold and silver or Bitcoin or something, just so you can be outside of the dollar, so you can at least get a start into it, then move into other investments, you know. But just understand that you have to do something. I mean, you got to do something. All right, we're going to wind her down here in just a minute. We got 440 people still watching. This is an incredible live stream. Thank you, everybody, for who joined in on this one. Simon, it's short for Florida, Hawaii, Philippines. Oh, well, that makes sense. For Hawaii pines? Good Lord. I'm going to have to hear you say it. Do you think the separation will be at a steady rate or will it increase rapidly? I think it will increase rapidly. I think that it will actually hit like an exponential growth kind of rate. Because you really think about it, the more the new debt issuance takes place, the more separation occurs. The more that the new issuance take place, the more the 20% or the top, I shouldn't say the top 20%, it's really the top 10, right? But really, you know, if you think about it, the top 20% are really what's participating within the consumption, right? The top 10% does by far the most of it, right? They do 50% of the consumption. The next 10% after that does an additional about 25% of it. So really, they're talking, I mean, not even the top 20, they're talking about the top 10, right? That's really where it's at. So considering this concentration to the upper income households, and that upper income households doing ever increasing amounts of the consumption, it's like literally going to be pushing the people out. Right? And so is this going to happen quickly? Probably. It's probably going to happen faster than people would have anticipated it, considering that it's like kind of picking up the pace as we go. All right, watching just outside of Portland. Have a great day, brother. Yeah, you bet, man. You as well. Life will be like that movie In Time. You forgot that 1945, the world was basically in ruins. 26 years later, the world was rebuilt with new factories and infrastructure. The U.S. industry starts to fall behind. Well, yeah, but you also that I didn't forget. Right? We were on a different type of currency back then. That was the gold standard. We were producing stuff, and the stuff was bringing us gold. Right? And then, not to mention, the world wars had everybody like scared as hell about their gold holdings, so they sent it over to the United States for basically to keep it out of the Nazis' hands. Right? And then we kept it. All right. Inflation has accelerated drastically over the past few years. Yeah, but that was the intent of the Federal Reserve. They wanted elevated inflation and inflation expectation. And you can actually find that within their own statements going back to Ben Bernanke talking about deflation and how to prevent it from ever occurring here in the United States. And that was a speech that was given in 2002. But ultimately, if you go and you read the monetary policy strategies for a low neutral interest rate world given by John Williams, November of 2018, he clearly talks about why it is that the Federal Reserve would need elevated inflation and inflation expectation. I mean, he literally spells it out in that speech. Yeah. And so they needed it. They wanted elevated inflation. That was part of it. And really, it's not so much even having the elevated inflation. They needed elevated inflation expectations, right, to make up for the fact that they failed to achieve the 2% target over the previous 10 years. This is something that I think a lot of times people get confused about when I talk about the elevated inflation that the Federal Reserve wanted. They will not want it forever, right? They only want it for the time being. And so with this elevated inflation expectation for the time being to make up for the shortfalls from the 2% target, eventually they will do it again the opposite, where they will let inflation run persistently below 2% to make up for the fact that we had elevated inflation for the previous 10 years, right? So it's just like, or maybe not 10 years, whatever years before. It's about average. They will consistently be running above or below 2% forever. But they will have the people convinced that they're trying to get to a 2% target because they want the long-term inflation expectations locked in at 2%, but they are working on flexible average inflation targeting, which essentially means that during times of deviations from the 2% target, they will do makeup for either shortfalls or overruns from the inflation target, because the target is a long-run expectation. All right. Did I read the last super chat? All right. From Mr. Bioskunk. Thank you so much. After the stream, go to US Debt Clock and read the new Money Revolution PDF. It appeared last week. It's really interesting. Okay, I will. Okay, listen, folks. U.S. Steel was sold to Nippon Steel this year. You know, but that's not like that's not the how should I? Like, I don't know how many people got lit up when Smithfield Pork was sold to China. The largest pork producer in the United States became a Chinese-owned company. That was back during like the Obama administration. It eventually sold. Didn't it get sold back to the United States? I think it did. I think eventually it did. But like, here you have like the biggest pork producer in the United States being a Chinese-owned company. I thought that was pretty weird, but nobody really lit up about it. I mean, some people did at the time, but not really, you know. I haven't watched that Link's video yet. I just came out. Show Sal some love, please. Yeah, absolutely. Old Nighter has this buddy Sal who does what's going on in shipping. Is that what it is, or what's going on in freight? Something like that. I think it's what's going on in shipping. I can't remember offhand. I watched a few of the videos. Really good stuff, and talks a lot about supply chain breakdown. And he keeps trying to get me to do to do a video. Smithfield American Now. Yeah, that's what I thought. That was a few years now, hasn't it? It was like, wasn't that like 5 years ago or so they bought it back? Or that it came back to the United States owned? Aside from gold, the other thing that makes the wealthy wealthy is oil. Oil creates energy. Energy creates everything. Runs tractors, combines, runs factories, increased GDP. All right. All right, guys, this was awesome. Thank you so much for being here. We got 270 likes. That's absolutely amazing. We're an hour and 35 minutes into this live stream, much longer than I was anticipating being out here. But we had so many people watching, and you all kept hitting that like button, which kept me going out here. So if you want me to continue on, let's get that likes up to 300. We got 406 people watching right now. If you can get it up into the 300 mark in the next 5 minutes or so, we'll stick it around for, who knows how long. But you got to go and hit that like button right now. Get it up to 300 likes in the next 5 minutes. All right. Tell Sal you came from the Uneducated Economist, please. Yeah, please do so. Are the supply chains established again, or are they still in construction, different orders? Well, I think the idea of a reestablishment of the supply chain is not what people thought it was going to be. Like, I think people thought, like, a broken supply chain meant fixing the supply chain again to essentially be in operation the way it was before it broke, like, put it back the way it was. And that's not the way it works. Like, once you sever partnerships, then you have to reestablish new partnerships. And so putting the supply chain back to where it was, I don't think that's going to happen. Will we find efficiencies taking place as time goes on? Absolutely. You have to think, like, when the supply chain broke down, how many warehouses got built and stocked with stuff? Remember, we had to have a more resilient supply chain with our own, inventory levels and all this other stuff. So they built warehouses and started stocking it full of stuff. Well, the just-in-time delivery is by far the most efficient, the most profitable way of dealing with an economy. Now, it's not secure, it's not safe, it's not stable, right? We learned that during COVID and the pandemic and the shutting down of shipping, that, just-in-time delivery can be very damaging to the economy if you can't deliver just in time. However, when it comes to profits and efficiency, it is by far the easiest, fastest way to do it, right? So as we shift from the ideas of being a more resilient shipping, distributing nation with warehouses and stuff like that, those have to be switched back over to essentially the more efficient just-in-time delivery, which needs trust and establishment to happen. Are we going to go back to that? Is it back to the way it was? I doubt it. No. There's a lot to it, and there's a lot more that needs to happen in order to put it back to something that would resemble the way it was, which I don't think can ever happen again. Like, once you sever those partnerships, new partnerships have to be reestablished. All right, blast that like button to the moon. All right, we're 10 likes away. You got 2 more minutes to get 9 more people to hit that like button. Simon, do you think Michael Saylor will cause another crisis with his Bitcoin Treasury unlimited money scam? His bankruptcy in 2000 caused investors to dump most of the unprofitable companies. I mean, I think it could cause, like, issues within the crypto markets. Like, I mean, that I think is a very real possibility. But then again, it's not just him, it's like other people who have done it as well. I mean, think about all the Bitcoin scams and big time news articles that have come out talking about the issues that have come up with people playing these Bitcoin, essentially these Bitcoin scams, right, that are taking place out there. Now, whether Saylor is an actual Bitcoin scammer or not, I mean, I think time will tell on that. Will it cause a crisis? Maybe amongst some people, but in the broader economy, I don't really think cryptocurrencies or Bitcoin has that much of an impact on the broader economy as of yet. And like it can, once it starts filling in more people's portfolios, once it becomes more of, like if you think about it, like if insurance companies, banks, all these big corporations or whatever had a significant portion of their portfolio held in Bitcoin and Bitcoin crashed, then that would start bringing down the general economy, the broader economy. But I don't think that's the case. Like, do they hold some Bitcoin? Yeah, but it's not a significant portion of their portfolio. Only a handful of people have actually done that. And so will they get punished? Absolutely. Will it be a crisis for them? But not for the general economy. Over time, if people were to put more Bitcoin on their portfolio, then they would be, subject to that sort of experience. In terms of investment, it's going to be like gold, silver, having hundreds of times more paper trading than the actual asset itself. Yeah, I can agree with that. I hope Taco Trump goes to jail. The world might heal if this happened. Well, untold misery. Untold misery. Yeah, name is fitting. The issue that I see with the comment there is that, again, you kind of put the blame on the external. You put the blame on Trump. You put the blame on something else other than taking recognition for the issues that you are now experiencing and saying, okay, how do I use this to better myself? Because this stuff is really heavy. Yeah, this dude's a jerk, man. All these problems exist out there. How do I deal with this accordingly? Because most people will look at it and say, that's the blame, that's the reason, this is the problems that I experience, and until that changes, my life will be miserable, right? Untold misery. So take it and own it for yourself, man. He's a jerk. What do I do about it? Right? Because I can't change him from being a jerk. I mean, hey, don't be a jerk. Well, that didn't work. Okay, let's try something else, right? Like, what is it you're going to do? You have to make these decisions for yourself based on what it is that you're seeing out there. And if it's not what you like, understand it. That's not what I want it to be. That's okay. I have to accept the things I cannot change, right? Because I have power to change the things I can. And hopefully, somewhere in there, I'll understand the difference. Alrighty, guys. I gotta call it quits. My phone is dying on me. So everybody who hit the like button, thank you so much. But I can't see the screen anymore, so I gotta go. Uneducated Economist, you guys let me know. Where is that button? I get it.